The water took me in one breath. One moment I was standing on the deck of a gleaming white yacht, the Delaware River sparkling beneath an autumn sun, and the next, two hands pressed flat against my back, and the world tilted away. I remember the cold, a cold so absolute it felt less like temperature and more like erasure. I remember the weight of my dress pulling me down, my hips screaming from a surgery I had not yet fully healed from. And I remember looking up through the blur of water and sunlight at the figure still standing on that deck, perfectly still, perfectly calm. My son did not jump in after me. He did not shout for help. He stood there and watched. I am Olivia Donovan. I am 67 years old. I built a logistics empire worth nearly $2.5 billion alongside my husband of 34 years. I raised a son. I buried my husband. And then, on what I was told was a celebration of my recovery, my daughter-in-law shoved me into the river, and my son let her. This is the story of what happened next. Have you ever had a moment when everything you believed about your own life turned out to be a performance staged entirely for your benefit? Because I had.
I just did not know it yet. When my husband Robert passed away 2 years before that morning on the water, the company we had built together from nothing became mine alone. Donovan Logistics had grown over 3 decades from a 2-truck operation into a national infrastructure company, the kind whose name appears on shipping contracts and federal partnerships most people never think about. To the outside world, I was a strong widow managing a formidable legacy. In private, I was a mother trying to hold on to the one relationship that still mattered. Daniel had grown up in privilege. He knew the sound of boardroom applause and the easy warmth of country club dinners long before he understood what it meant to show up early and leave late. I tried, over many years, to give him the values that had built our family: patience, discipline, the understanding that wealth is a responsibility, not a reward. Some of it reached him. Much of it did not. But I held to hope the way mothers do, long past the moment when hope becomes something closer to denial. His wife, Vanessa, was a different kind of person entirely. She was precise in a way that felt calculated.
Her warmth was always timed, always aimed. She smiled when it served her and went cold when it did not. And in the early years, I told myself this was simply her manner, that underneath it she cared for my son, and that was enough. I was wrong about that too. In the months after Robert died, Daniel called less frequently. When he did call, the conversations were brief and circled always, somehow, back to the business. Suggestions about restructuring, questions about the board, gentle mentions of estate planning. I noted these things without naming them, the way you notice a change in weather but tell yourself it is still fine enough to go outside. And then, one Tuesday morning, his voice on the phone was different, warmer, boyish even. He said he wanted to celebrate my recovery from hip surgery. He said he had the boat ready and it would just be the 3 of us, a family afternoon, something easy and quiet on the water. My chest filled with the kind of fragile hope I had almost forgotten how to feel. I put on the navy dress Robert had always loved. I pinned my hair. I told myself this was the turning point, the moment my son reached back toward me.
I should have listened to the thing beneath his warmth. I should have seen what was behind Vanessa's sharp smile when she greeted me on the deck. Loneliness, I have since learned, has a way of blinding us to the danger in a familiar face. I believed because I needed to believe. I nearly died because of it. After I was pulled from the river by a retired fisherman named Franklin and his teenage grandson Ethan, I lay on the deck of a rusted fishing boat, wrapped in a wool blanket, and understood with a clarity I had never experienced before that I could not go back. If Daniel and Vanessa believed I was gone, they would not look for me, and if they were not looking for me, I had time. Time was the only thing I had left, and I intended to use it. Franklin was a practical man. He listened to what I told him without flinching and without disbelief, and when I asked him not to report finding me, he sat with that request in silence for a long moment before he nodded. He said sometimes the right thing is not what the law says. Then he told me to get warm and start at the beginning.
4 days later, I stood beneath an oak tree at the edge of Greenwood Cemetery in a borrowed black veil,
and watched my own funeral. The casket was silver and extravagant. The rows of mourners were genuine. Neighbors, friends, Robert's old colleagues, people who had known me for decades and were crying real tears for a woman they believed was gone. At the front, Daniel and Vanessa stood perfectly composed. He shook hands with reporters, his eyes glistening on cue. She dabbed at her cheeks with a silk handkerchief and tilted her face toward the cameras at precisely the right angle. They were very good at grief, I will give them that. That night, I returned to the Princeton estate where I had spent 35 years of my life. Daniel had never asked for the key back. The house smelled different. Robert's cologne was gone, replaced by the sterile scent of expensive cleaners and something artificial and new. Beneath dust sheets, I found furniture I had not chosen, an entertainment system I never would have approved. Upstairs in Robert's study, spread across his desk in neat, damning order, I found a folder labeled Project Mabel.
I want you to understand what was inside that folder, because this is the part of the story that goes beyond betrayal into something far colder. Page after page documented supposed memory lapses, supposed hallucinations, supposed signs of mental decline, all dated, all attributed to me, many bearing forged signatures from doctors I had never seen. I recognized the incidents they described: a missed appointment I'm given the wrong date for, a pill bottle that had been switched when I was not in the room. Every event I had experienced as a small confusion had been manufactured, recorded, and compiled into evidence that I was losing my mind. They were not just trying to inherit my estate. They were trying to erase who I was before they took it. And then, from the second floor of that silent house, I heard something that stopped me completely. A baby crying. Daniel and Vanessa had no children. They had always made this clear, insisting their careers left no room for it. Yet there, in the guest bedroom Vanessa had always dismissed as smelling too old, I found a nursery.
Soft walls, a white crib, brand new toys, and a newborn boy no more than a few weeks old, his face flushed and urgent with need. Headlights swept across the window. I heard a car door. I ran. The private investigator Franklin found was a woman named Laura, and she was exceptionally good at her work. Within days, she had traced the child to a private clinic across the state line, and from there to a 17-year-old runaway named Anna Rivera, who had died during delivery 3 weeks earlier. The clinic had recorded it as cardiac arrest. Laura said it was too convenient. I looked at the photograph of Anna for a long time. She was smiling shyly at the camera. So young, her face still held the last softness of childhood. Someone had traded her future for a cover story, a child who would serve as living proof of family continuity, while her mother was buried in a file somewhere. But Daniel and Vanessa did not have the architecture for something this elaborate. Someone had built the framework they were working inside. Laura kept pulling threads. The name that surfaced again and again was Claudia Mercer. On paper, Claudia Mercer was a respected estate attorney in Newark, polished reputation, glowing client references, families who praised her steady guidance through the difficult transitions of inherited wealth. In reality, Laura had connected her to at least 20 suspicious deaths over 5 years, widows and widowers who had slipped, drowned, or faded quietly, always at the precise moment their heirs were growing impatient. Always with Claudia Mercer somewhere nearby in the paperwork, her name buried 3 steps back from the event itself. She was not simply a criminal, she was running a system. She recruited relatives who were already greedy and only needed direction. She manufactured evidence of mental decline, she cleared the legal path and made sure the money moved cleanly. She was, in the most precise sense of the word, a professional. Laura told me Claudia thought I was dead and was already accelerating probate through the courts. Within weeks, Donovan Logistics would be in Daniel and Vanessa's hands, and Anna's son would be their perfect proof of innocence. I sat with that information through one long, sleepless night at Franklin's kitchen table. And then I made a decision. I would not hide. Hiding would not stop Claudia Mercer. She had survived too many investigations to be brought down by someone staying out of sight. If I wanted justice, real justice, the kind that would pull her entire net we could close. She needed to believe I was desperate, frightened, and making poor decisions. She needed, in other words, to underestimate me one final time. We set the trap in my own house. Federal agents positioned themselves quietly in the surrounding neighborhood. Hidden recording equipment was placed in the study in the living room. Laura coordinated with investigators who had been building a parallel case against Mercer for months and needed what only I could provide, her own words, spoken in what she believed was a moment of total control. I sat in Robert's old armchair and waited. At 7 o'clock precisely, the front door opened. Daniel stepped inside, and his keys fell from his hand when he saw me. Vanessa screamed, a real sound, raw and uncontrolled, nothing like the sculpted grief she had performed at my funeral. I looked at my son across that room and felt something settle in me, quiet and final. I said hello. I asked if they had missed me. And then Claudia Mercer walked through the door. She was exactly as Laura had described, composed, immaculately dressed, carrying herself with the particular authority of someone who has never been seriously challenged. She set her leather portfolio on my coffee table and looked at me the way you look at a minor inconvenience you are about to resolve. She called what I had done unwise. She explained with genuine calm that she provided a service, that families wanted freedom from burdens, that she made it clean and efficient and legal. She called it, in her own words, estate acceleration. She said the old pass sooner and the young inherit sooner, and everyone wins. She said this into 3 hidden microphones while federal agents stood 12 feet away. The windows came in with the sound of boots and shouted commands. Claudia Mercer was on the floor before she reached the back door. Her portfolio scattered across the rug and pages of forged contracts and manufactured medical reports spilled out across the floor like evidence arranging itself. They arrested her on conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, wire fraud, and elder abuse. They arrested Daniel and Vanessa beside her. In the months that followed, in courtrooms I attended every single day, Claudia Mercer's network came apart entirely. Corrupt doctors, a compromised probate judge, attorneys who had processed fraudulent paperwork for years, all of it surfaced. She was convicted on every count and sentenced to life without parole. Daniel accepted a plea agreement, 25 years. Vanessa received 20. Everything they believed they had already won slipped through their fingers as the verdicts came. The final proceeding was not in criminal court. It was in family court, and it was the one that mattered most to me. I stood before the judge with a small boy in my arms. He looked up at me with dark, serious eyes, studying my face with the solemn attention that very young children sometimes have, as if they are deciding something important about you. I told the court his name would be Samuel Rivera Donovan. Rivera for the young woman who had given him life. Donovan for the family that would love him without condition and without agenda. The gavel came down. Custody granted. 5 years have passed since that evening. The house is full of noise now, the kind that belongs to a curious, bright 5-year-old who asks questions faster than I can answer them and has strong opinions about which stories deserve a second reading. Samuel knows the truth about where he came from. I have never hidden it from him. He knows his birth mother was a young woman named Anna Rivera who was brave enough to walk him to live. He knows that the people who brought him to my house were not family, only thieves who confused possession with love. And he knows, because I have told him plainly, that real family is not a matter of blood or paperwork. Real family is built from choices, made again and again, in the ordinary moments when no one is watching. I think about the river sometimes. I think about the cold and the weight and the moment I looked up through the water and understood that my son wanted me gone. Those memories do not break me. They remind me why I survived and what surviving actually required. It required that I stop performing safety, that I stop believing the warmth in a familiar voice meant the danger was not real. It required financial independence I had spent decades building and never thought I would need to defend. It required legal knowledge I had accumulated across 30 years of running a company, knowledge that told me exactly what evidence looked like and how it could be used. Justice after 50 is not passive. It does not arrive on its own. It has to be built the same way everything worth having is built, with patience, with clarity, and with the willingness to walk straight into the thing that frightens you and dismantle it from the inside. Starting over at any age begins with one decision: to refuse the story someone else has written for you. I am Olivia Donovan. I am 67 years old. I am a grandmother by choice and a survivor by will. And I am still here.